Hello everyone, welcome to the NN Classroom. Today I'd like to share with you a past paper question from 2019, time zone 2 in May. So question number 2, a pretty typical question asking for mole calculation or so-called chemical equation balancing. Yeah, let's see. What is the sum of the integer coefficient? So given that we must be using integer but not a fraction, that means the lowest possible number, when the propene undergoes a complete combustion. So that means our target is to balance this chemical equation, and then at the end use all the coefficient that balanced, which is going to be integers, and add them up. The question type is pretty simple and straightforward, but then students should realize that in this particular example it is quite difficult to balance a particular element, which is oxygen, right? So for this kind of question, normally when handling balancing equation we have a skill, and this skill is actually being demonstrated quite a lot of times during the class. So remember, when balancing equation seems so easy, but quite a lot of students actually don't know how to do it properly. So I'll tell you. So the skill is, remember, when balancing chemical equations, balance the element in the last step. That means we only need to handle the element in the last step. So this is the most important thinking mindset. Why say like that? It's all because when we change the coefficient of elements, so in this case the element goes to oxygen, right? So purely existing. That means if we change any of the coefficient in front of the oxygen, we are not changing any other coefficient like carbon or hydrogen that is previously that we should have balanced before, right? So that means elemental wise do this balancing in the last step, which is most flexible. So which means changing any coefficient of this won't affect any of the balancing, especially in this case, which is carbon and hydrogen. So that's why we should handle carbon and hydrogen first. And quite a lot of students are actually heard from the teachers that we should construct a table and then put all the elements on the left and then put all the elements on the right and make them compensate and balancing. I think that's a bit more time consuming. So for me, I will still be just simply based on the equation template, and I will apply the skill. And that is balancing element, remember, in the last step, right? So in this case, that means oxygen. We've handled it finally, right? So first, let's see. For this case, maybe we can start up with like carbon, right? So let's see, for the left hand side, we have 3 of it. And on the right hand side, we have just only got 1 of it. So that's why, simply speaking, we multiply by 3 for the right hand side. Let's see. So carbon, done. Secondly, so that is hydrogen, right? So given 6 hydrogens on the left side, while only 2 on the right, so that means we still need 4 moles, right? So that's why by balancing, that means we should multiply this by 3 as well. So supposedly, after going through this, putting 3 and putting 3 on the right hand side both, supposedly carbon and hydrogen's done already, right? But then finally, as mentioned before, right, we only balance the element in the last. And students will have realized that on the right hand side, on this case, we got 3 times 2, 6 of the oxygen, and here 3 times 1, which is 3 of the oxygen, and totally we got 9 of the oxygen. So this is the most difficult part for this question. How we can change the left hand side an even number to an odd number, which is 9. And the result is actually pretty simple. That perfectly applying why we need to balance the element in the last step. Because by putting any coefficient in front of this oxygen, we'll never change my balancing previously, that is carbon and hydrogen, right? So that means without changing this 9, what my thinking is, I want to change the 2 to 9. So how I can change the 2 to 9? And the answer is simple. We can multiply a fraction, right? 9 over 2 in this case. And then simply speaking, we can eliminate the 2 and put the 9 on top of this oxygen. So that's perfect. Supposedly, this is done already. But according to the equation, we must be put as integer. But we know that after we balance it, supposedly this is balanced already, right? We can just eliminate the denominator by simply multiply with a constant, right? Multiplying a constant that is same as the denominator will help us to eliminate these 2, while at the same time keep the equation still balanced, right? So that's why at the last step, we multiply the whole thing by 2. So that's why here becomes 2, and then here becomes 9, and here 3 times 2, which is 6, and also here 6, right? So finally, the sum of the coefficient will be the addition of these all numbers, now integers already. So that will resulting in giving me answer D, 23.